Welcome to Tech Trends.
Thank you very much.
Nigerian software industry, how do you think it has done so far?
I'll put it this way. It's still in its nascent stage, but significant improvements have been made in the past couple of years. And I'll say in 5 years, there've been some significant improvement, courtesy of some policies from government, and of course, some greater emphasis in the local content space as well.
But are these policies really being enforced at the moment?
In terms of enforcement, I wouldn't put it as in terms of a strict enforcement. However, there is some very strong awareness and understanding on the need to address local content, particularly in the oil and gas space. In the financial services, we hope that that shift would begin at some point. And when I say financial services, I'm not referring to just banks. I'm also referring to insurance companies and other financial institutions. So over time, there will be some greater emphasis on local content. And luckily, with the economic situation as it is today, we're going to have to look inward for solutions, because looking for the dollar to do things is going to be a nightmare.
But would you say that the Nigerian software industry is actually being given the support it needs? Now, I ask this because a country like China, for example, China has this protectionist sort of policy. Now, I'm not saying we should go that route, but don't you think that we might need to do more?
Well, let's put it into context. The global software market, both in terms of the product space and the services space, it's over a $400 billion industry. Of course, America takes the largest chunk. Then, surprisingly, followed by India. Now you've got China, England, Germany, France, all of them now competing for the next level. But even in that space, we're talking about a substantial amount of money in several billions of dollars. Now, whatever path we choose, we must always be concerned with the development of our own local resources. We cannot continue to outsource some of these skills, some of these expertise, because the day we start doing it, the Indians would flood this market. And the moment Indians start to flood our market, we will never be able to have the same opportunities to develop our own local resources. So China, with its protectionist policies, it has worked for them. India did something similar in the 80s. Yes, they had a closed economy, and you could not do anything in India unless you had a partnership to allow you transfer knowledge, skills. And over time, they were able to build the competencies through a combination of some very, very good policies, which included education and some of the partnerships that they had with some of the major OEMs. So at some point, you cannot leave your market open just for the heck of it. No, you can't do that.
So Ghana, for example, is actually building different things around technology park, investing a lot. Are we assuming that because we have the population, we think that things will come to us? Are we not joking with this opportunity of this moment?
Well, there's something good about having a big population, because it also means that you can always address a larger number in terms of critical mass. And in this business or in this industry, the advantage will always go to those who do have a critical mass, both in terms of skills, resources, good policies, great leadership, and of course the projects to help build the larger industry. So now, Ghana, they've always had a very focused economy. Unfortunately for them, they are still a small economy. It doesn't mean, though, that they can't carve their own niche. They can carve their own niche the same way other countries have done.
Like Finland.
Finland, for example.
Small, but...
Very small, but a potent industry. Look at Japan. Japan, who hears about Japanese software? But 90% of these guys are so geared and skilled in developing games. And you cannot beat them in that space. Now, you can move around all over the world, and each country, I mean, Israel, France, England, you name them, South Africa, each country is beginning to find its own unique space.
So what should be ours in Nigeria?
Well, for the time being, we need to look inward to help our own development, first and foremost. I don't accept the premise that we should be buying foreign software for everything that we do. I don't accept that premise. The only way we can build our own competencies, develop our own skill sets, create the employment opportunities, and create a veritable and powerful industry is by looking inward. Now, the guy who started off Honda, Soichiro Honda, he made a statement. He says, success is 99% failure. After you've gone through a sequence of failed projects and failed attempts, at some point you do hit some success. We're going to have to go through this cycle where we've come up with projects that haven't succeeded, but you learn from those failed projects and you move on to the next stage. We must begin to focus on the development of our young students and minds, making them great developers, teaching them all the modern tools to allow us develop very, very strong and powerful and highly innovative and creative solutions that would help our own development process. In that process, you are now going to see a lot of innovation and a lot of creativity, which has started happening already. I mean, there are so many stories out there. I'm sure you know about the success out of the Idea Hub. Again, the Idea Hub was a policy that came from federal government. It was a phenomenal policy. And if allowed to nurture, would help to jumpstart this whole thing about entrepreneurship, which is where we should be, while at the same time focusing on education, focusing on skill acquisition, focusing on how to build our industry to be a mega billion-dollar industry.
So as the president of ISPON, what do you think government should be doing at this point in time to encourage the software industry? Because every success in any industry when it comes to technology, software is very important. Facebook today is built on software and every other thing. So what do you think the government should be doing at this point in time?
Well, again, I like to appeal to the general understanding that, first of all, software should not be seen as an intangible. And that's one of the biggest challenges that we have with our policymakers. If you understand what goes into the development of a young mind to create software that you can use to run your business or to run your shop or to do some planning in your farming or to do whatever it is that you need to do to stay connected to a larger community in whatever space that you're in. Once we begin to understand that our policymakers must think along those lines, then one major aspect of our work has been accomplished. So from a policy standpoint and from ISPON standpoint, we need to influence policy. And we need to influence policy not just for the short run, but for the long term as well, where the influences, those in policy, those in the policy-making arms of government, must understand and appreciate why this industry is absolutely critical. So what must government do? Government must recognize that to be able to create employment, you must be able to, what do you say? You must feed the industry. No industry grows on its own. Remember, 70% of the money that revolves around Nigeria comes out of government. Our banks, everything relies on government. So we we in the software industry, we cannot be any different. You can have individual companies that can spin a lot of money by doing independent work outside of government. Yes, that's all well and good. But for the larger benefit of the economy, you cannot rely on individuals. You must rely on a consistent and coherent government policy to help drive the industry forward. And to do that, it must be funded. So, Americans use the defense industry. The British use some interesting makeup of funding projects. And remember, they did it in the early era of the internet revolution. And they did it only because they were afraid of the import of the American businesses in England. So they were funding a lot of businesses. Some failed, some succeeded. The Germans have always subsidized their industry, always. Whether it was the car industry, manufacturing industry, you name it.
Up to this day.
Well, I don't know by how much up until this time, but significantly at some point. So you cannot tell me that you're going to have an open market just because you feel like you need to address the needs of the foreign companies.
Yes, I mean, personally, I think the government isn't doing that right. I mean, lots of times you find them being more on the advantage point than the local software industry. So I think that we should get government to look at how we can also encourage our own local software developers.
Again, I totally agree with that position and with the premise, and this is why local content is important. Now, it has been abused, but it can also correct itself. It can be corrected. So government can, through local content, address this issue, but it has to be a concerted and a deliberate policy to make sure they can grow the industry. And I say this for a simple reason. There is no software business that can survive on a 2 million naira contract. It is not possible. It'll be dead before you say Jack Robinson. So we need to find a way to fund large-scale projects.
Well, at that point, I want to thank you so much for being on Tech Trends today.
Thank you so much, and it's been a pleasure.
Welcome to our Tech Link segment. This question comes in from Prince via Facebook, and he says, I'm a blogger and I'm having a hard time making money from my blog. Well, here's the reality, Prince. This challenge isn't peculiar to bloggers or startups alone. Even giant companies like Twitter are also finding it difficult to monetize their content. So you're not alone. But in your case, I suggest you think outside the box by looking for other ways to monetize what you have already. So, and this may include sponsored posts, strategic partnerships, and even offline speaking engagements, depending on how well you have developed your personal brand. Top priority for any successful blogger is the need to develop top quality content at all times. That's our show for today, but the conversation and knowledge sharing continues online. Do join us there. Remember, you can watch this edition and other editions of the show on the Channels TV YouTube account or via my blog techsmart.ng. For Tech Trends, I'm Chukwuemeka Agbata.